Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in from truly across the continent. It's such a thrill to have you all in today. My name is Jesse. I'm here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and I know we've got a lot of newbies today. So if you are new to us, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we do that through about 40 live, free, monthly interactive broadcasts with the coolest scientists and explorers and places on planet Earth. Now, you're catching us not just on a normal day, but on a really special day, because we are continuing our epic Peak Discovery series in collaboration with the amazing folks in the mountain parks in Parks Canada. BC and Alberta are not just two of the most beautiful places in Canada, they're two of the most beautiful places in the world. And over the last few months, we've had the immense privilege of getting to partner with them on all sorts of stories featuring the history, the biology, the geology, the incredible tales of these parks. You can catch all those programs on our YouTube channel. I really encourage you to check out more. There's so much to explore and discover. And this, sadly, is our third last program with them. We are going to dive in today. After this, we've got Grizzlies and Hoot and Howl, so that should be fun, and you can check that out on the Peak Discovery page. But we really are thankful that you're all here today. Now, before we dive in, I'm going to note we have a Kahoot today. I'm going to get the game pin in the chat for everyone in a minute, but between our talk and our Q&A, if you want to play along with a little 4-question quiz, there'll be an extra opportunity to keep it nice and interactive today. So stay tuned for that in the chat on StreamYard and YouTube in a second. Now, I'm so thrilled to welcome back Marian. Marian is joining us from Jasper National Park, and she's going to talk today about my BFF's bat friends forever, because her neighbors are not Ontarians or British Columbians or even Newfoundlanders like me. Her neighbors are bats, which for some of you might sound absolutely terrifying. I would love to have bats as neighbors. And maybe by the end of the program today, you're going to learn about why Marian is as well. So without further ado, I'm going to zip my lip. I'll turn you over to Marian. Thank you so much for joining us for the 8 gazillionth time, Marian. So nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again too, Jesse. It's always a pleasure to be here.
It is. And we've got like 900 kids today. It's absurd. They're from all over the place. That we had to stop them at the door. There were just too many that wanted to come into the broadcast. I think, no, we can have an unlimited number of kids, and for good reason today with this amazing topic too. So I'll leave you to it.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, hello, everybody. I'm so excited that you were able to join us today for this presentation. As Jesse said, my name is Marian, and I'm a Public Outreach and Education Officer with Parks Canada. So I just wanted to show you on the map, give you a little idea of the amazing number of national parks we have across Canada, as well as national historic sites, marine conservation areas, and even a very special national urban park. Now, as Jesse mentioned before, I do come to you today from Jasper National Park in Western Canada. So just to give you a better idea of where we can be found, you can look at that little blue arrow on the screen pointing to Jasper, nestled into the beautiful Rocky Mountains on the border of Alberta and British Columbia. It's a very special place to be. Before we do begin with the presentation, I would like to acknowledge that Jasper National Park is located in Treaty 6 and 8 territory, as well as the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Assiniboine, Daneza, Nehiyawak, Secwepemc, Stoney Nakoda, Mountain Métis, and Métis. We acknowledge the past, present, and future generations of these nations who continue to steward the land. Now, part of my job as a public outreach and education officer is to share stories about Jasper National Park and the plants and animals that call it home. And today, we're going to be talking about bats. As you know, very special animal. They're very cool. Although some of you might have heard some scary stories about them. And I know that I did too. I heard that bats can fly into your hair and get tangled, or that they drink blood or carry diseases. Well, bats don't want to get tangled into your hair any more than you want them to be there. That wouldn't be very pleasant if you're walking along to the corner store to get some food and walk into a giant net. They're probably just swooping by to catch that tasty moth that's hanging around near the light that you have at night. Because all of the bats in Canada are actually insectivores. They love to eat bugs. And while it is true that some bats do drink blood, like this little guy right here, this little bat burrito in the picture, only 3 species in the entire world do that. And most of them are much more interested in bird blood than yours or any other mammals. And finally, while it is true that some bats can carry disease, So can any other wild animal. So the important thing is to keep your distance, give them space, and call someone like a fish and wildlife officer or a team member of Parks Canada or one of your provincial parks if you see a bat that's injured, that's on the ground, or that's out in daylight. Never handle any wild animal with your bare hands. It's just a good idea to be safe. But like I said, they're no more likely to carry disease than any other wild animal, and certainly maybe some unvaccinated domestic animals as well. Now, bats are pretty special for a lot of reasons. And there are as many reasons as there are bats. But do you have any idea how many different types of bats there are in the world? The answer might be a little surprising. So I'll ask you to take a moment, maybe chat with the person next to you, make a guess. You can put it into the chat box, or maybe Jesse might be able to bring up some of our classes to guess how many bat species there might be in the entire world.
I certainly can. Well, anyone who wants to chime in on YouTube, StreamYard, I know a lot of you don't have audio, but Avoca West, grade 3, how many bats do you think there are? What do we think?
Oh, I'm hearing over 1,000.
Over 1,000. We've got 100. We've got 2,000. Ms. Gonzalez's class, Mr. Walter's class. Let's see. CFL 1, 2. Is that much working? What do we think? Hi.
Hi.
I love the energy. We've got 20,000. These are really big guesses, Marian. These are like the highest guesses I've ever seen for this question. This is amazing.
It's fantastic. Well, to give you some numbers, if you said over 1,000, you're right. There are approximately 1,400 different species of bats worldwide. That's pretty incredible. It's one of the most numbers of any order, which is very, very cool. There are all sorts of different types, from the insect-eating bats of North America to the fruit bats or flying foxes of Asia, Africa, and Oceania. They're all over the world. And I was lucky enough on a trip to Australia last year to see some fruit bats, and it was one of the highlights of my trip. The only continent where you won't find any bats is Antarctica. They're located on every single other continent of the world, although you won't really find them too far up north either, way up in the Arctic. And according to the Bat Conservation Trust, there are very few isolated islands in Oceania that don't host any bats either. But otherwise, you're going to find them everywhere. You might even find some of these bats in your backyard where you live, which would be pretty cool. So if there are about 1,400 worldwide, how many do you think are in Canada? Now, I will give you a hint. The number is way, way smaller than the worldwide number.
Let's see. I'm counting on my hands. I think it's probably more than fit on my hands. You know what? I honestly don't know the answer to this. If I were to guess, I'd say 20. But let's see what our answer's coming in. YouTubers, you can chime in. StreamYard classes, we'd love to hear from all of you. Okay. Miss Wall's group, let's see if your audio is working. Maybe?
Oh, hi.
Hi. What do we think?
How many bats do you think there are in Canada?
506.
Okay. How many do you think, Zach?
500.
500, we're guessing.
Okay. Fantastic. Miss Gonzalez's class, we'll check in one more time, see if they got the audio working, or we'll take the private chat as well. Even if not, we'll say hi. Oh, no audio, but hi. 70, 275, 50, 40, 500. Marian, these are minus 20. I'm really low on this one. What is it?
You're actually the closest, Jesse. There are approximately 18 different species in Canada. So a lot fewer than around the world, but still a really good number. And 9 of those different bats actually can be found in Alberta, where Jasper National Park is. And quite a few of those bats have been monitored in the park itself. Scientists are still doing work to figure out exactly which species of bat can be found in the park. But yeah, as of right now, we have the number is roughly 18 in Canada, 9 in Alberta, which is very neat. And all of those bats in Alberta and in Canada, they, as I mentioned, are insectivores, which means they eat insects, bugs. They have those sharp little teeth to crunch down on hard beetle shells, and most bats will eat while they're flying. They'll eat on the wing. Talk about fast food. So they hunt at night, as you might know. And you might be wondering, or you might already know, how do bats do that? I mean, it's dark at night. How do they see? And although the rumor is that bats are blind, they've got pretty good eyesight. But What they do use for hunting is something called echolocation. And if you were telling your classmates that you knew that, well done. So they create these noises that are at a high enough frequency that humans, or at least most of the bats, do it at a frequency that humans cannot hear. And those sound waves go out and they bounce off the insects that they're hunting for and come back to the bats so that they can swoop in for a delicious buggy snack. One type of bat that lives in Canada and can be found in Jasper, the little brown bat, can eat up to half its body weight in insects every night, which is pretty incredible. And I think if I ate half my body weight in anything, I would have a stomachache. Another cool fact is that they drink in flight too. It's hard for them to take off from the ground. In fact, usually when bats take off, they'll take off from a higher point and drop a little bit before they catch flight. So it's easier just to swoop down and take an in-flight refreshment. And that's just skimming the surface of all the cool things about bats. Pardon the pun. Bats are also one of the longest living mammals for their size, which is pretty incredible. The little brown bat lives an average of about 10 years in the wild, but some have made it to as old as 30, and I believe the oldest known bat was 41 years old. By comparison, a mouse, which is about the same size as most of the bats you'll find in this country, only lives for about a year and a half in the wild. It's amazing. So, how do I know so much about bats? You might ask. Maybe just because I work for Parks Canada, and as you know, the people who work for parks are passionate about all sorts of animals, all of nature, the environment. But I have to admit, it did take me a while to learn to get along with the bats. See, where I work at the Palisades Center, there are two different kinds of bats that roost in the summertime in some of the buildings. They are long-legged bats and those little brown bats. This is an actual screen cap from the live stream of one of their roosts. And yes, there is a live stream of the bat roost, a maternity roost. Might not be live yet. The bats tend to come back towards the end of April, beginning of May, depending on the season. But after the presentation, if you want to search up Jasper National Park, Palisades Center, Batcam, or Watchable Wildlife, you can tune in once the camera's alive and maybe be able to see the bats yourselves. But some of you might understand that I wasn't super comfortable with the idea of a colony of bats above my head. It was kind of unsettling, actually. And, well, as you can see, I did change my mind, but why don't I show you, and we can cue up the video, what happened when I found out about the bats.
I was in my office one day when I heard this strange sound coming from the ceiling. What was that? It was coming from above me. I better ask my supervisor. Bats? Oh dear. Yep. Turns out, right above my head, there was a colony of bats. Of course, I wasn't too pleased about this. But then... Yeah, I'm getting to that part. That was my friend Miss Squeaky. She's one of the bats that lives in the attic. But I can tell you that I wasn't too pleased at first. So, what did I do? Well, I decided to do what I do best. Read about it. But then, I was given another idea. Huh. That's a good thought. Why don't I try to step into the wings of a bat? The first thing to do is to look for a place to roost as a bat. I don't know. It looks like the branches here are a little small. Maybe up inside this picnic shelter. Bats do like to roost inside buildings sometimes, or under shingles. Anywhere that gives them a little bit of shelter. That didn't seem to work either. A little bit too tall for me. While I'm looking for a place for me to roost, I'm not the only one looking for a good place for bats to sleep. Scientists at Parks Canada actually look for places that bats like to hibernate or like to roost during the day to understand more about the bats and what kind of bat species live in the national parks. Bats like to roost upside down. Their feet are facing a different way from ours, so it's a lot easier for them to cling on. So if I could just well, it's easy for you to say. You're actually a bat. I can feel all the blood rushing to my head. Maybe this wasn't such a great idea after all. I should probably try something else. Okay, plan B. I know at the Palisades Center there are bat boxes too. So bats like to roost in trees or in old buildings, in caves or mines, but people can also provide bats homes. Bat boxes are a good way to keep bats around, even if you don't want them inside your buildings. Now, if I could just... Nope. Well, let's try it again, maybe with my wing. Reach one more time. Nope. Ugh. Oh, dear. I guess a bat box isn't going to fit a human. Time to get a snack. Now, bats don't usually go to the kitchen for a snack. They hunt their food, and they do it at night because they're nocturnal. I thought I'd see what there would be available for me, since I'm not actually a bat and everything. Probably go for the next best thing. Delicious. Like my bat friend says, bats actually in Canada eat insects. They're insectivores. They're also the only mammal that can truly fly. But I thought I'd give it my best shot. Put the goggles on for safety, and here we go. You didn't have to make a comment on my form like that, Miss Squeaky. You know, I'm doing my best. It's not easy for a human to try and fly like a bat. I think I'd better try another strategy. Because most bats do actually need to drop before they can fly. Maybe if I jump off this stump, I can get just enough momentum. And I landed. Well, it was worth a shot. I guess humans just aren't really good flyers. Except with a little help. Turns out bats have really neat wings. They're called handwing chiroptera. Look at those little bones in there. Those are their fingers. It takes a lot of energy to flap around like a bat. Oh my goodness. After all that flying, I thought it was a good idea to cuddle up with my little bat buddies and take a nice long nap. It takes a lot of energy being a bat. Good thing for a lot of the bats that live in Canada that they get to spend the winter sleeping. That's right, they hibernate. They cuddle up together in big snuggle piles of bats, mostly in caves or old mines, and they spend the winter snoozing away. One problem about this, though, is that they're not the only thing in there sometimes. There's a fungus that causes a disease called white nose syndrome that grows on the faces and wings of bats, and it wakes them up during hibernation. It was discovered in New York in 2006 and has spread across the continent since then. It's devastating for the bats because they're not able to find food to survive the winter. 90% don't survive. This is the reason why 3 species of bats, the little brown bat, the northern bat, and the tricolored bat, are declared a species at risk. I thought I'd ask my friend to tell me a little bit about the projects that Parks Canada is taking on to help the bats. So I'm here with one of our park biologists, Nina, and she knows a lot about bats. And since I'm trying to learn more, I thought I would ask her some questions. So I know that bats in Canada are threatened by a disease called white nose syndrome. And I was just wondering if there's anything in Jasper that we're doing to sort of keep track of the situation or to protect the bats.
That's such a good question. So yeah, white nose is the primary concern for bats in Alberta and in Canada in general. In Jasper specifically, we're doing a lot of monitoring. So we want to know what species live in the park, how are they distributed? So like where can we find them? And we're trying to locate hibernacula within the park to see where bats are hibernating. In addition, we're doing a lot of protection. So basically any cave in the park is closed for recreational purposes. You can get a permit if you're a scientist, if you need to do some research, but if you see a cave in the park, please do not go in, just in case there are bats in there that we're trying to protect.
And how do you find out what bats are here and where they are?
That's also a really good question. So mostly we do a lot of acoustic monitoring because just it's nighttime. Bats are small, they're quick, but they do emit echolocation calls. So we set up bat recorders throughout the park to see what species we can hear. And based on the way they echolocate, we can get an idea of what species that we can find. Oh, got a trigger. There must be a bat. Oh yeah, there's one.
Hi, Nina.
Hey, MJ.
It worked.
It does. Yeah, it's triggering like crazy. Must be echolocating. So we set up a bat detector in an area where we know we'll find bats. So something like a marsh where there's lots of insects, so lots of food for bats. We'll set this up on a pole. We'll attach the microphone 5 meters up, way up in the air. Just that's where the bats will be flying around unobstructed. There's no vegetation in the way, so they'll be able to find their insects more easily. And this is always listening, but it only records when it hears a bat, something high frequency, and that's when we'll be able to see what kind of bats are hunting insects in our locations. We also do acoustic transects using a car with an attached microphone. So we drive around the park and we record these echolocation calls, which we can later analyze in the lab.
That's really cool. And I've heard sometimes it's kind of hard to tell the difference between different species when they call.
Yes, that's very true. A lot of species kind of echolocate in the same frequency, so we can maybe say what generally this bat is. So we have another project that's going on in the park to try to nail down what species we have, and it's our Bats and Bridges project. We have a collaborator who visits bridges where bats like to roost during the nighttime, and he collects guano. So he collects bat poop and then sends it off to a lab that does a DNA analysis to see what species we have.
So as a non-scientist, is there anything that I can do to help the bats or help the people who are helping the bats?
I think the most important thing you can do is let someone in the park or someone like a fish and wildlife officer know if you do see a bat, especially if you see a bat in distress. Don't touch it, but it helps us with our monitoring work. Having people like you and people like you watching report any bat sightings to us really helps us get an idea of where the bats are found within the province.
That's so cool. Thank you so much for showing me all of this, all of the things that scientists are doing to look for and listen for the bats.
Anytime, come again.
Will do.
With that, I decided to head back to the Palisades with a newfound appreciation for my friends, the bats.
Well, that was fantastic. Oh, Marian, I can see why you'd have such an appreciation for bats after that epic journey. Holy, better than the box office, really.
Absolutely. So as you can see, I did some reading and I talked to some people and I learned more about the bats. And I learned about all sorts of incredible things about them. And now I have so much of an appreciation of these incredible little animals. And it is true that there are things that we can do to protect these species at risk. You can learn about them. You can help your friends and family understand more. You can look up how to build a bat box and where to put it in your yard if you want to have bats around and host them in your garden. You can plant plants that will attract the species of insects that bats will like to snack on. So there's all sorts of things that you can do to help protect the bats and help other people learn to appreciate them more. So that's the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank everybody so much.
Thank you so much, Marian. That was fantastic. And your willingness again to don all manner of costume for this Peak Discovery series is noteworthy and fantastic. As you well know, we're going to dive with our Kahoot now. 4 quick questions together. Before we dive in with Q&A, our Bayside Public School folks, you guys are going to be first when we do our Q&A, so stay tuned for that. If everyone wants to flick on your mics, get ready. Marian, as you well know, for Kahoots, the faster you answer, the more points you get for our classes. So get those answers in nice and quickly. What you win is Marian and I's everlasting respect and the joy of all the bats in the world, which is pretty cool. So please do chime in. And if you don't want to play along online, that's fine. You can just yell out the answers in class. The more, the merrier. But we are going to dive in just a second with this and get underway. All right, let's do this thing. Marian, if you want to give us little hints in these questions, you're welcome to maybe nod what might be the right answer. But let's get in. I'm also going to share the bat cam at the paddle stage with everyone at the end of the broadcast, so stay tuned for that, guys, too. All right. Question 1. How many species of bat are there in the world? Now, one of our classes, our Paul Gray Public School, you guys actually got this dead on in the chat, which is ridiculous and has never happened. Is it 400? Oh, 400, 4,000, 1,200, or 12? And I may note that one of these might be a little higher than that. I may have put the wrong number, but it's close. All right.
Yes, put the closest one in.
Closest one in. Yes. 1,400 is what we put in the presentation. 1,200 because I 2s and 4s mixed up a minute ago. But way to go, guys. Most of you got this right. That's fantastic. They are, as Marian said, the second most common group of mammals. The only thing there's more of are rodents. So Charming Puffin takes our lead as we go into question 2. All right. Bats in Canada eat what? Is it fruit, insects, blood, or breakfast cereal? I had Shreddies this morning. This is my plug for Shreddies. It is the best cereal ever. I love it. But now, it's not the answer for this. What is our answer for this? We talked about the Australian bats eating fruit. We don't have Australian bats here in Canada. Or Canadian bats. And the answer is yes, insects. So I think it's most bats in the world eat insects, to my understanding. There's a few species that eat fruit, but yes, most bats. Insectivores, you guys nailed that one. Charming Puffin keeps our lead as we go into question 3. All right. How many bats actually drink blood? I changed this up, Marian, a little bit because I like this picture.
Okay.
None. It's a myth. There's no vampire bats. There's 3 kinds of vampire bats. There's 50 kinds of them, or almost all of them. That bat behind you right now drinks blood. Maybe not. That's one of the things we talked about a little bit in the program. Let's see, 5 more seconds, and then we're going to check in. All right, 33 answers. Yes, 3. There's only 3 kinds of vampire bat. They're all in a very set region of the world. You're unlikely to ever run into a vampire bat, and even if you do, they're not nothing much to worry about. So glad we got that question in. You guys are on the ball. Charming Puffin might get this wire to wire with Epic Gazelle hot on their heels. As we go to question 4, bats are members of the order Chiroptera, which means mousewing, jazz hands, night flyer, or handwing. What do we think? Jazz hands would be a great order name.
That would be great.
Probably not right. Our Kahoot earlier was about bears. And one of the things was, what adaptation do bears not have? And it was like heat-resistant exoskeleton. But it's like, can you imagine if they did have that? Hand wing is our correct answer. Way to go. A few of you thought night flyer. A few of you thought mouse wing. 3 of you thought jazz hands. And we like you guys a lot. Let's see what that does to our leaderboard. Hand wing is correct. Tara is wing. Kiro is hand. Epic Gazelle is in 3rd. All right. Drum roll. Bum, 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 bum. Balanced Chicken is 2nd. And first, for all the marbles, by 9 points, which is crazy, is Charming Puffin. Way to go, everybody.
Amazing. Well done.
Who you are in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. But we're going to head to our Bayside Public School crew and check in. Hopefully all the audios and everything's working. Unmute your mic and come on in and chat with us. Hey, guys. Hello. Yep.
My question is, how does bats sleep upside down, and how does their blood not rush to the head?
Oh, that's an incredible question. So bats, they've evolved to sleep upside down. And the way that it works is that their feet face backwards from ours. And so that when they cling on, you know how when we hold on to the monkey bars, we have to like tense our muscles and hold on tight. they're adapted so that they can just kind of hang on and then relax, and they still stay clinging on to where they are. And the blood doesn't rush to their head because they've got these special valves in their veins, so that the blood flow is different than it is in our bodies. In our bodies, just gravity just does all the work and we get all dizzy and red-faced. But for bats, their bodies have evolved especially so that the blood doesn't do that.
Yep. Well, and a sort of opposite way of thinking about this is, why doesn't all the blood stay in your feet? How does it get back up? And we've got valves that keep it pumping that way, and you have the same with something like a giraffe. So we've all sort of evolved to make sure that blood stays where it needs to be in our bodies. We don't want it rushing to places where we don't want. So that is a great question to kick us off, guys. Miss Gonzalez's class, now I don't think your audio works, but I'll say hi, welcome in. And their question is, why are bats brown and black, Marian? What's the deal with the color?
Oh, that's a good question. And I don't know the answer for sure, but a lot of animals will evolve their different colors for camouflage and for protection. But not all bats are actually brown and black. There's the Honduran white bat, which is actually looks like a cotton ball. It's so pure white. And there's the painted bat, which actually looks like a Halloween mascot. It looks like it shouldn't be real, but it's orange and black. So there's the eastern red bat as well, which lives in Canada, and it's kind of sort of a reddish tawny color. And the hoary bat, which is sort of like, if you were in high school in the 2000s and you had the frosted tips, the hoary bats kind of have that style as well. So they're more of like a silvery gray grizzled color.
Everyone in my high school and middle school had that hair, Marian. Everybody, I swear. I'm going to pull up a really quick picture of the Honduran white bat, but they're so cool. So there's a really quick Google search. But they're like a magical bat. Like, everyone should go check these out when they're done, but they're so fun. So there you go. Not all black and brown. Great question, guys. All right. Miss Chapman's group, Miss Wallace class, if you guys want to unmute your mic, we can check in with you in a minute. I'm going to go to Boca West. They got all three of our Cahoots. The whole podium were them in Glenview. Grade 3s, come on in and congrats. Share a question with us. Hello. Oh, is it working? Is it frozen? We're not sure. We're thinking about it. We'll come back. I don't know what's going on. You guys were so good until a second ago. Miss Michael's class, we're coming back. We promise. Miss Wall, we'll head to you guys and check in. Hi, guys. Hello.
Let's hold on. Ask your question. Hi.
If you ever went into a cave, would a bat swoop down on you, or would they just stay there?
Yeah.
I think it would depend if you startled them or not. Like, if you went into a cave where there were bats and you frightened them, then they wouldn't swoop down to attack you at all, but they would swoop to fly and get away. But I know that my friend Nina, who I was talking to, a scientist, she's been into lots of caves with bats, and they don't swoop down on her. And a lot of that is most of the time when the bats are in caves, they're actually hibernating, so they're fast asleep, at least the ones here. So they spend their time in caves most of the time in the winter.
Yeah. It's something that a lot of kids ask. We get this in every single bat program. You are unlikely to ever have a negative interaction with a bat. Bats want nothing to do with people more often than not. And when you do end up in a situation where you're sort of working with them, again, you have trained professionals that are doing that. So you're never going to go and grab a bat. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea to grab any wild animal. Just leave them alone where they are. But bats will not come for you in any scary way, certainly in Canada. So great question, guys. Avoca West, we lost you for a second, but you're back now. Hi, welcome in.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, and I'm wondering, vampire bats drink blood, right? From which animals do they drink blood?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So yes, vampire bats do drink blood. And for the most part, they drink from birds. So I believe it's 2 different species of vampire bats that pretty much only drink bird blood. There is one other species of vampire bat that will drink mammal blood, but it's more likely to be from livestock, like cows or sheep or goats or things like that. So it is possible for a vampire bat to bite a human, but we're not their preferred dinner.
No, we're not anything's preferred dinner, really. So that's good to know. That should give you a lot of comfort. We're really bony compared to other creatures, so nothing really wants to eat us much as the big predators. Speaking of vampire bats, we're going to go to Miss Mustard's class on YouTube at Tribune Drive. Karthik asked so many questions, so thank you for this again, Karthik. They want to know, where in the world do those vampire bats live? Marian, do you know?
So they live in Central and South America. So vampire bats are ones that you're going to be finding sort of in Mexico and then down through Central and South America. So that's where you're going to find the vampire bats.
Yeah, if you're in Canada, you're good. If you're in Australia, you're good. Very few places have them. I've seen Guatemala, Belize, Mexico. So again, Central America, for those who don't know some of the countries. I love this question. Thanks, Karthik. All right, Miss Chapman's class, Miss Chapman's class wanted to know, what kind of insects do the insect-eating bats like?
Oh, absolutely. So they eat pretty much whatever's available, but they really like certain types of beetles. And actually, they're great for farmers as well because there's lots of pest beetles and pest insects. So I can't remember the actual name of the beetle at the moment, but it attacks fairly common crops like corn or squash or things like that. So they really like beetles. They like moths. They like anything that's got a little bit more meat to them, but they will also eat things like mosquitoes, which is wonderful.
We actually had a program with a bat conservationist not too long ago, and they did a tally. I think it's in Mexico alone of the amount of ecosystem service that bats eating the insects provide to the country, just because they're eating the things that would otherwise eat the crops, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, bats are hugely important to keeping insect populations down. So I'm really glad we got that question. Also, saying what kind of insect do insect-eating bats eat is like woodchuck chuck. That was really hard to say. So thank you for that very tricky question, everybody. We're going to head to a second round, guys. Bayside Public School, come on in and take us away, and you're good to go. Hey.
Yeah! How much colors can a bat be?
Ooh, how many colors again?
How many colors? Oh, that's really good. I know bats can be brown, black, silver, gray, orange, white, red. I mean, a lot of them are sort of like in the spectrum of brown, gray, silvery colors. A variety of spectrum of that. But yeah, white, orange, reddish, blonde, all sorts of colors like that.
Perfect. Great question, guys. All right. Miss Gonzalez, type your question in the chat, and I'll come and show you guys in a minute once you've done that. Miss Wall, I'm going to head to you guys now if you have another one. Come on in.
Ready? Hey. Do bats walk?
Ooh.
That's a great question. So they don't like to. At least most of them don't. And they're capable of sort of walking a little bit, but as you know, their wings are their hands. So they don't really have like the four paws or four things like humans or other mammals do. So it's a little bit more awkward for them. Some of them can, and actually I believe there's a type of vampire bat that can sort of run. But there's very few that are that are very easy on the ground, easy to move on the ground, and some of them can swim.
Yes, I was going to say that too. And I'm trying to think back at all the nature documentaries I've ever seen, and the only bats I've ever seen consistently on the ground are in New Zealand, where they sort of fight with these giant crickets. So it's a weird sort of battle on the ground with this monster insect and this tiny bat. It's a really weird situation. So I'm really glad we got that strange question. Thanks, guys. All right, Ms. Gonzalez, I know you have a bunch of people at the camera. Share them in the chat. Get them in as quick as possible. We've got a few more minutes left, and I want to make sure we get those questions in. But we're going to head to Glenview of Oka West, grade 3s. Come on back in. Hey. Yes. Hello. Hello.
My question is, have bats ever slept upright?
Ooh.
That is a good question. I think there's one type of bat that does, but I can't remember what it is. And that would be a good thing to research on your own to see if you can find out.
Yes, I'm going to say I've never heard of such a thing. They do derive from ancestors that would have slept more normally, from like four-legged things. So we actually have pretty good tracing of bat evolution. You can look into that a little bit, some of the sort of ancestors of bats, which are really cool. That's a stumping one. I love when we stump the expert. This is half the fun. Let's take a few more questions. Oh, Ms. Gonzalez's class. I just looked this up. So I love this question. Marian, this is a tricky one. Is there any country that has a bat as a national animal? I don't
actually know. However, I do know that Australia and New Zealand every year have a national poll to vote for their bird of the year. And it was either last year or the year before, New Zealand and New Zealanders voted their one native bat as their bird of the year.
Oh, the birds were so upset with that result, but take that, birds. If you fly, you get to be involved. Let's see. Oh, so many great questions, guys. Okay, I'm going to take one from YouTube, and I'm going to take a few random ones. We've got 4 more minutes or so. Let's see. Neha wonders what species of bat has the largest population. You can do this for Canada or the world if you happen to know, but let us lay it on us.
It used to be before white nose syndrome, at least in Canada, the little brown bat. So they were kind of the most common bat found pretty much everywhere across North America. But since the introduction of white nose from Europe, or at least we believe it came over from Europe, that population has been absolutely decimated. So like of infected colonies, up to 90% sometimes are victims of the white nose syndrome. So unfortunately, because they're such long-lived animals and they only have one pup per year, basically, it's going to take a long time for that species to recover. But for North America, little brown bat, up to fairly recently.
I will put a plug for a positive story for bat conservation as well. But in North America, it is pretty challenging right now to be a bat conservationist. Everyone should look up the African fruit bat migration when you're done this program. Millions of bats that have like 5 to 6 foot wingspans all together in Central Africa every year. It's one of the most magical things in nature. So do check out the African fruit bat migration when you're done. All right, let's take a few ones from online. Bayside Public School. What would be the most dangerous bat that exists? I love this question. Oh, I should have let you say it in person, but yes, most dangerous bat, Marian. Are there any dangerous bats? What's the deal?
Well, I mean, I think that depends whether you're a bug or not. Dangerous bats, it's relative. Any wild animal can be dangerous if it's frightened and it feels like you're a threat to it. But for humans, I'm not sure. That's a good question, but I don't know sort of what criteria you would have for what the most dangerous is.
Yeah, but I know this class has had a few questions of sort of worrying about bats. And again, bats are not to be worried about. They're not scary. They're not coming for you in any serious way. If you run into bats, you're not in danger. A lot of people are planting bat boxes to sort of encourage bats to live near them. Bats are really, really special creatures. You should be so lucky as to see a bat. That's the essence of today's program. So I like that we keep getting these questions, guys. All right, we're going to take 2 more, Ms. Wall, and then Avoca West. You have some great questions, and you also found out that Arita bats sleep upright. Way to go, Lily and Mackenzie. You guys rock. Ms. Wall, I'm coming to you, and we'll wrap up in Illinois in a second. Hey, Ms. Wall. Hi.
Say hi.
Hi. How high up would it have to be for a bat to take off?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think as long as it has just like a little bit of a dip, they can take off. So like if there's a bat that finds itself on the ground, it can climb up a tree a little ways and take off. But usually they like to be higher up. So, they roost in buildings or up in trees. Although there are some bats that do sort of roost under rocks on scree slopes. So depends on the bat. But as long as they can sort of drop down before they hit anything, then that'll be a high enough drop.
What a neat question. We've never actually had that one before in our bat history. So thank you for that. And then Avoca West, whatever you choose to ask is great. If you ask the one in the chat, that's never been asked, which is really cool. But grade 3s, take us away. Hey, guys.
Go ahead.
So I have a question. Do bats dream?
Oh my goodness, that is such a good question. I don't know if anyone's ever studied that. I mean, bats are really similar to us in a lot of ways. Babies learn to talk by babbling. They lose their teeth, their milk teeth, just like we do. And they have little conversations. They're very social. So bats actually can chitter at a volume that people can hear. It's different from their echolocation calls. But whether they dream or not, I mean, there are a lot of different animals that dream. So my instinct would be to see that probably yes. But I don't know if anyone's ever studied that. Maybe when you grow up, you could study bats dreaming.
Would be very, very cool. I love that you answered it this way. So again, we're not only sort of highlighting the fact that science is constantly a learning process. We don't know everything. There's lots that we haven't explored and discovered still to be found. But yes, animals tend to be more alike to people than a lot of people give them credit for. There's certainly animals that are related to us. They often share similar behaviors and lots of things for that matter. So we've never had that question for any animal, I don't think, in like 1,600 broadcasts. So thank you for the dream question, guys. That was great. Classes, this has been so much fun. Time flies when you're having fun, so we are going to wrap up soon. I do want to note, check out our Peak Discovery series. There's 2 more amazing programs to come, so please do check those out. And if you head to our YouTube channel, there's so much more you can explore and discover on bats and more. Marian, before we bring in all our classes to say thank you and farewell, is there any last message you want to leave us with about bats today?
Just keep an open mind, keep learning, and protect the bats.
Protect the bats. There's our call to action for today. You guys can all play a really big role in this. Thank you all so much for listening. And as we always do to wrap up the program, I'm going to bring in Bayside, Miss Gonzalez's, Avoca West, Mr. Walter's class. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. You